Hello and welcome to the third episode in this series. In this episode I'd like to demonstrate the creation of a lower third that incorporates an image. The lower third will then be imported as a nested timeline into the main project, where it will be animated. If you're a Movie Studio Platinum user, nesting isn't supported, so the section on animation doesn't apply. However, my next tutorial deals with the type of animation shown in this tutorial, but it achieves it without the need for a nested timeline. This is the lower third I'll be creating. As in my last tutorial, to save time, I've made a note of the parameter values to aid me. Also, please note that frame values and display dimensions are relevant to the PAL Full HD format. Other formats will require the values modifying. I'm going to start by creating the lower third as a nested timeline. This isn't the recognised method for nesting, but for my purposes I've found it to be the easiest. I've started a new project and inserted 5 video tracks. The tracks have been renamed to reflect the events that will occupy them. My first event will be for the text background. This will be a solid colour event and I'm going to choose red. I'll place it on track 4 and change the length to 7 seconds. Pull that back to the loop point. Now, as usual for all my text backgrounds, I like to change the opacity. I'll change it to 0.5. This will allow the background video to partly show through. I'll close that down. I now need to scale this down to a strip using track motion. I'll make sure that the cursor is at the beginning of the timeline, and I need to change these values. We'll leave X at 0, Y will be minus 367.9, the width will be 1365.8, and the height will be 98.8. So that's the text background strip located. Next comes the border for the text background. You don't necessarily need this, but I think it gives the lower third a better look. This is another solid colour event, and as I usually do for the border, I'm choosing white. Now this goes on track 5. I'll need to change the duration again to 7 seconds. Pull that back to the loop point. Now I'll need to scale this down so that it acts as a border for this background. So again, I will use track motion, and at the beginning of the timeline I will change these values. Leave X at 0 again, Y will be minus 367.9, and width will be 1365.8. And the height will be 119.5. Made a mistake there. That width should be 1389.8. That's better. Now I have to apply a Bezier mask to this background so that the transparent or the semi-transparent background strip will show through to the video. If I don't put a Bezier mask on this event, then it's just the white that's showing through, as you can see there. I'll select Bezier Masking, open up the general options and mask 1. Now this is a little tricky because the mask is shown full frame, whereas the event has been scaled down. So I need to change the width 1 to 0.982 and the height to 0.848 and the location 1 will be in the middle, 0.5 and 0.5. I now need to put a check mark in the invert, and that looks to be okay. So now you can see the black is partly showing through rather than the white. Now I'm going to place an image, a square image, just about here. But I want the image to have a white border. Now I could use the Vegas border effect to create this border. The problem with this is that the border encroaches into the image. So if you want a fairly thick border, you lose some of the image. To create a border outside the image, I'll place another white solid colour event on track 3. And again reduce the duration to 7 seconds. Again, I'll have to scale this down to create the border effect. Again, with the cursor at the beginning of the timeline, I will change these values to x equals minus 623.7. Y is minus 367.9. The width is 111.93. And the height is 97.5. Now once that background is set in place, I can now import the image. I've located a suitable image which I will place on track 2. Bring that back to the 7-second mark. I need to scale this image down to fit that box. So again, I will use track motion. And change these values. X equals minus 623.9. Y is minus 368.4. Width is 150.5. And the height is 80.71. You must note that these figures are correct for this particular image. You'll need to experiment a little, as I did, to get the right values for your image. The final element is a text event and goes on track 1. Change the length to 7 seconds. Now I want this text to start off around about here, but I don't want it to move if the text string is lengthened. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I will change the anchor point to center left. I will now change the font to Times New Roman. And the size to 14. The colour is going to be yellow. And I want it to have a black outline of width 5. And to position this text, I'm just going to use the location parameter. I'll change the x coordinate to 0.22 and the y coordinate to 0.16. And close that one down. And that's the lower third completed. I'm now going to save that. I'm going to call it lower third nest 01. I can now close that down and open up my main project. This is my main project, and as you can see, it just consists of a clip of about 10 seconds. To incorporate my lower third nest into this project, I just simply navigate to the project and pull it down onto the timeline. Wrong one. I just have to refresh that one. There we are. Put it in just about the right position. And now I've only got 2 tracks. I will pull that down so we can see it a bit better. So this lower third project now becomes one event. And the beauty of this is that I can apply any action to this event and it will apply to the whole lower third. So now for the animation. I've placed the event in the correct position for the clip. This isn't strictly necessary at this stage. If you're dealing with multiple different nests, they can be moved about after changes have been made to them. I'll show how this can be done in tutorial 27 part 1. Now I'll open up track motion for the nest track. And place the cursor at the beginning of the nest and add a keyframe. At this keyframe, I'll set these parameters. Leave X at 0. Y will be minus 377.98. We'll leave the width at 1920 and set the height to 0.7. This is the start of the animation. I want the animation to last 5 frames, so I will cursor forward 5 frames. Open that out a little bit and place a keyframe. Now at this keyframe I want the event to be full frame, so I simply right click in the box and click Restore Box. I now need to repeat the process at the end of the event. I'll come back 1 frame. I've explained why I do this in my previous tutorials, and add a keyframe. As with the intro, the outro needs to be 5 frames long. So I'll come back 5 frames and add a keyframe. Now this keyframe needs to be the same as the second keyframe. And it is. For the last keyframe needs to be the same as the first keyframe. So don't want to do that, so I'll go to the first keyframe and copy it and go to the last keyframe and paste. I can now check the animation. I'll close that first. I can now open this nested timeline and modify it by putting the correct text in there. So to do that, I select it and come down to this icon here, or right click it and click Open Nested Timeline. Now that pulls in the nest, so I can now go into the titles and text, and change it. Another icon down here returns me to the parent timeline. There's a warning that says I've made changes, so I need to click yes there. That goes back into the parent timeline, and we now have the correct text in the lower third. There you are. Another mode of animation and another way of achieving it. Join me for my next tutorial when I'll be demonstrating how Movie Studio Platinum users can achieve the same type of animation. Meanwhile, please consider subscribing to my channel, and I look forward to reading any comments you may have. Until the next time, bye for now.